We should not lose sight of the fact that the Trump administration needed congressional approval for the action they took in Venezuela. Obviously, they didn't seek that. They didn't even brief the main key member or leaders of Congress on any of this before it happened. But don't take my word for it. That was the position of Donald Trump's own chief of staff in an interview released by Vanity Fair just last month. I know that feels like a long time ago, but it was just last month. Now, here it is in black and white. Quote, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles conceded that attacking targets on Venezuela's mainland would force Trump to get congressional approval. If he were to authorize some activity on land, she said, then it's war. Then we'd need Congress. Again, that was Donald Trump's own White House Chief of Staff in a piece that came out just last month. And yet, here we are. Joining me now to discuss this and everything else happening is Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, I've been thinking about that quote from Susie Wiles basically all day, but let me just start by asking you what has struck you most about the events of really less than 24 hours.
Well, it's not just the lawlessness. Obviously, he flouted Congress and the Constitution. He flouted international law so much that France and Germany and European allies are expressing skepticism. It's also his betrayal of everything he ran on. I mean, here's someone who in 2016 said, I'm against regime change war. That's how he beat Jeb Bush. I'm against the nation building that George W. Bush did. And today he's out there telling the American people we're going to run Venezuela. What happened to building up jobs here at home, to caring about the costs of living here at home? And many people just see this as a total betrayal of putting American interests and the American people first.
To your point, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene posted today that this kind of thing is, quote, what many in MAGA thought they voted to end. Boy, were we wrong. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene posting something critical of Trump isn't necessarily a shocker at this particular point. Most people in MAGA world have kind of gotten in line to date. Do you think that will change, or what is your expectation? Because to your point, it's very counter to what he ran on and what a number of people who voted for him thought they were supporting.
Well, after the initial strikes, I saw some folks in MAGA, like Mike Lee, trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, saying, oh, this was just a strike and a capture of Maduro. Now, that's a violation of international law. It's going to have terrible consequences. But then I think Trump made it worse. He goes up to the press conference and he says, no, it wasn't just a limited strike. We may go back in there. We're going to run the place. And he's got no plan for how he's going to do that. And now the American people are thinking, well, how much is this going to cost us to be able to have troops there? What is the plan? Are we really going to be a police-keeping force in Venezuela? And why is our president spending so much time talking about Argentina, Venezuela, the Middle East, and he's not spending time talking about Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin? What happened to the manufacturing jobs? What happened to lowering prices from day one? It just makes him look totally out of touch.
Well, no question. And I think it's not the only motivation. He himself talked about oil. We've been talking about that. But the fact that a lot of those other things are not going well sometimes is a reason why he does something like this. Let me ask you, Senator Tim Kaine said he'd force a vote next week on a bipartisan war powers resolution to block Trump from continuing military action against Venezuela. That's something he often has proposed, including under Democratic presidents, when he doesn't approve of military action and believes Congress, of course, should have been consulted, as they should be. But do you anticipate, from what you've seen now, from people you've talked to, that there could be more Republicans who break ranks with Trump on that vote? Or what do you think at this point?
Well, Senator Kaine has shown, as you mentioned, great leadership on this. Susan Collins was the reason it didn't pass earlier, and we should remember that in 2026. But I do think that we may see more Republicans in the Senate and even in the House say no to this effort of regime change and running Venezuela. The other thing I think people misunderstand about the American people is there's a morality to our foreign policy and our values. And we don't like to just go take in other countries' oil. Like, that's not who we are as a people. And this is going to offend a lot of Americans. Like, that's not what America does. We're not an empire. We don't go marching into countries and just take their stuff. We're the country that fights for freedom. And I think people who are just looking at this from a legalistic perspective or saying he's not listening to Americans are missing the fundamental morality that most Americans have.
Well, I think that's true. The legality is part of it. But yes, to your point, I also think if the American military's resources are used, if our men and women are used, if this continues to escalate, that is going to have a real pushback in this country, I expect, if not before then. Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you so much, as always, for joining me.
Thank you, Jen.